Hello everybody, what is up? Cobra here. Today I've got a custom expansion I wanted to show to you guys. This was made a while ago by me and a friend on the Axis and Allies Facebook page, Johan Hinders. And so basically this idea came from him at first, and I kind of helped with some ideas and some formatting on the rule set, which can be found on the Axis and Allies Facebook page. So basically, this expansion set is called the Swede-Finn Federation, or Swede-Finn expansion, and how it works is it adds the nations of, or basically implements the nations of Sweden and Finland better into the game, or not better into the game, but in a new light. And basically, a little bit of backstory was that during the Soviet invasion of Finland here, Sweden was heavily debating on backing their Nordic allies and declaring war on the Soviet Union. Now, in this expansion, it goes a little bit further and basically takes the calls from Sweden to form a federation with Finland and takes them into the extremes and basically making it so that during your game, the nations of Sweden and Finland will join powers and create one big Nordic nation up here in the north. Basically, how you would want to implement this is maybe you have too many people playing a global war game and you don't want somebody to say play just France. You could have somebody play this extra power. And the cool thing about this power is that they are they're a fourth faction of the game. Now, are they going to take over the world and win the game? You know, something like the Soviets might try to attempt. No, but they are a cool power for somebody that likes to be a little bit more diplomatic, that likes to play sides against each other and, maneuver their units and basically provide some lend-lease to try to sway the tide in, say, the German Allied and maybe even Soviet favor. So, as you can see here, the setups are slightly different from your normal 1936 setups, with a few more infantry here and there, UT Jaegers and Sissi militia for the Finnish, along with navies. You can see that the Finns now have a coastal defense ship and a submarine, or a, what's it called? Coastal sub. And the Swedes over here have a special new unit that I'll go into later called an aircraft cruiser. So, getting into it, I've got the reference sheet beside me so I can talk about what to expect when playing this expansion. So, basically, starting off, these two nations are going to be separate. So let's say that you are a power or a player controlling these two nations. They're basically played as two separate nations with their own economies. They move at the same turn, but they play like neutrals. You can't declare war on anybody, and they each have pretty minimal peacetime incomes, and in peace, you're basically just going to kind of build up units, maneuver units, and so forth. So, getting into kind of how you're going to play this is seen in the overview. So, home country, all territories, all 5 territories in the Sweden-Finland sphere of influence are their home territories. So, the Swedish-Finnish Federation rule. While neutral, units and IPPs are moved and spent respective of the starting nations, like I said before with Sweden and Finland having separate economies. Once Sweden and or Finland is attacked, all Finnish and Swedish units and IPPs are treated as the same. So like I said, both of these powers are separate, completely separate incomes, separate units. Movements are in the same turn, but if you attack, say the Germans attack Sweden, or the Russians decide to do the Winter War, these two powers will combine and create one big Nordic power. In the 1936 scenario, they are at peace with everybody, and same in the 1939 scenario. So, Lend-Lease, they are able to Lend-Lease to everybody. Now, the Swede Finns are definitely more in favor of the Germans or the Allies. They really don't like the Soviets, which makes sense. They're right on the border. But they can Lend-Lease to everybody, which is nice. So they can lend some support to the Soviets if they really want to. And they also have some special abilities to receive Lend-Lease during the war. Surrender conditions are a little different from others. So Sweden-Finland will surrender if only one homeland zone is left under their control. They'll also surrender if they're split under the following circumstances. And basically, what those entail is that if, say, Norland right here is captured, they are now split in half. They in reality they can't coordinate well, and they'll surrender if they can't retake that link at the end of the turn. That could also be achieved by taking Lapland, or if you took multiple zones. And as I said before, if only one land zone is possessed, so let's say that they've been pushed back by the Soviets and they're hunkered down here in Gotland. Well, if they can't capture any territory, they are going to surrender on that peninsula. All right. Now, declarations of war, getting a little bit into their politics. Basically, declaring war on Germany. So they can only declare war on Germany if Germany possesses Denmark and or Norway, and Paris is still free. So this is not possible during the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. So they can decide to declare war on Germany, but as I said, Germany has to either have possession of Norway and or Denmark, and also Paris has to be free. So this would happen if, say, the Germans decided to invade the Nordic countries early game and Paris is a free country, or Paris is a free city, or if the Allies liberate Paris, then, and the Germans by that time may have some of these Nordic countries under control, the Swede-Finns can go to war. The Comintern, so the Swede-Finns can only declare war against the Comintern if the USSR possesses Karelia and or any other Swedish-Finnish zones. So basically, if the Soviets decide to take anything, then the Swede-Finns have to declare war. That kind of makes sense too, because the Soviets, are moving in, they're taking territory, so they're going to declare war on them. Finally, the Swedish-Finnish Federation cannot just go out and attack the Commonwealth or the Allies unless the Allies attack them, which can make sense. Say the Allies maybe have a control over Norway, they may want to invade a pro-German acting federation. So then, getting into some of their other things. So peacetime increases if the USSR or Germany declares war on any other nation, or if the USSR completes a capital ship. That second one probably won't be seen that much, but the first one will definitely help out the Federation when the Germans and Soviets are being aggressive in other areas of the world. Then, wartime bonuses, they do have a couple. So, not at war with, or wartime bonuses, so once they get up to their wartime status, and they're at war. So if they're not at war with Germany, that's a +2 bonus every single turn, basically representing good trade with the Germans. If they're not at war with the US or UK and not blockaded, they get $1 for each. So if they're blockaded by the US player, they can still trade with the UK. If they are at war with the USSR, they receive 2 IPP per turn. If they possess a Norwegian land zone, for the first time, they get 1 extra IPP. So if they invaded southern Norway, they get a bonus IPP for just that turn of taking it. If they possess Karelia or Kola, which are these two territories here on this peninsula, and those are each, so they have a possibility of gaining +2. When they're at war with the USSR or Germany, they get 5 IPP for that round only, just as a bonus, like a jump up to wartime economy. So they have a lot of abilities, but those can't all be claimed at once, as some of you may point out. So if they declare war on the Russians, well, they're not going to get the IPP from declaring war on the Germans. So that's basically how that'll work out. Victory conditions, they only have 2. So, like I said, basically you could play this in 2 separate regards. Either the Swede-Finns are their own alliance, their 2 victory conditions can be achieved, but of course they're not going to beat any other power, but they can personally kind of compete to try to get those 2. Or you could treat it as whatever faction they join, whether it be the USSR, the Germans, or the Allies, they can basically be treated as additional victory conditions. So those two extra points could be tacked on to, say, the Axis, the Allied, or the Comintern victory conditions at the end of the game. So Basically, those two are Free Scandinavia, which is 1 point, for having the biggest fleet in terms of IPP value in the Baltic Sea here. The next one is Contain Communism, so it's having a bigger fleet in terms of warship size than the USSR in the Baltic. So both of them are, oh, and the USSR has to not possess any of the Baltic territories here. So both really have to do with their fleet and controlling the Baltic Sea, and also kind of the land side of things, where nothing bordering the Baltic. So that probably means that they would want to take Leningrad too, to kind of secure that off from the Comintern powers. So next up, we have their I went all in depth in this, so strategic naval movement is 2 units, range 5, pretty average. Alright, and then getting into some of their special abilities and Lend-Lease features. So, special abilities. We've got Motai Tactics. So, while defending in forest and or swamp terrain, these Swedish-Finnish units have a target selection on the first turn of battle against armor and artillery class units. And if the enemy attack fails, the Swedish-Finnish player may pay 2 IPPs for each destroyed armor or artillery, and basically they get to capture that vehicle, but at a lesser value, and it's all on the charts here. So basically, let's say that the Soviets take a medium armor right here, and they, for some reason, attack this territory. Now, what's going to happen is the fight's going to happen, and the Soviets will likely lose. So they're going to have that armor destroyed. Now, what can happen is the Swedish-Finnish player may pay 2 IPP. That represents them capturing that tank. And if I can find it in here, let's see. Sorry about that. Basically, what it represents is them capturing that unit and using it in the war. So paying 2 IPP, and instead of getting a medium armor, they're going to get a light armor. So that one works pretty simply, and it will add up. You know, the Swedish-Finnish won't be wanting to, pay for tons and tons of units. They won't have that kind of money. Next up is the Sampai people. So the Sampai people only benefit Swedish-Finnish Federation units in Norwegian land zones. And so basically only in these 3 Norwegian land zones will this occur. Infantry hit on the first round of combat may retreat on a 1-2 into Swedish-Finnish homeland territory. So let's say Swedish infantry over here in southern Norway is destroyed on the first round of combat. It can roll, and on a 1-2, it basically gets to retreat, representing it saved by the native people. Swedish-Finnish ski infantry receive a movement of 2 in these Nordic land zones. And also, if you're playing with partisans, they get supply when Swedish-Finnish units are, or Swedish-Finnish partisans are in these territories. Lastly, we have 2, so Winter Warfare, which was something that Johan had come up with, another expansion that has to deal with winter warfare and different benefits that'll cause. And Advanced Artillery, which basically at the start of January 1940, without using any sort of tech, the Federation units, basically the player can start building advanced artillery. So representing the really advanced artillery tactics and equipment that the especially the Finns were using at the time, but even the Swedes, they had some pretty good self-propelled guns. And again, stuff like this, they don't have the economy to say, like, keep pumping out these advanced artillery, but, maybe like a Lend-Lease to Britain or Germany. Oh wait, actually, now that I think about it, they can't Lend-Lease those. So they can use them for themselves, but of course they're not going to be able to pump out tons of them. All right, getting into Lend-Lease. So they have a couple of opportunities, once per game for each of these, to receive some extra units, because as I've pointed out, they don't have a lot of income and they have a lot of threats. So first up, we have surplus fighters from the U.S. In January of 1940, the U.S. may sell 1 non-existing fighter to Sweden. This unit enables the U.S. to build a Lend-Lease fighter by paying only 5 IPPs, and it follows a regular Lend-Lease supply path. So basically, in 1940, the U.S. can say, I'm going to support these guys, pay 5 IPP, and Lend-Lease a fighter. So let's say that they end up going through with that, and they want to support the Swede-Finns in their operations against Russia. So here we have a fighter getting placed. Next up, we have German War Trade. There's two different possibilities of this opportunity. So first off, we have January of 1939. If Germany possesses Bohemia, then the Federation may buy 1 light tank by paying only 2 IPP, but Germany can refuse the purchase. So let's say the Germans have captured Bohemia, and the Swede-Finn player, wants some more armor. They convince the Germans, hey, let me buy this armor for 2 IPP, and I'll help you out against the Russians later in the game. And so for this, the Germans oblige, and the Swedish-Finnish build a light armor. And here you can see their cool-looking light armor, and they place that in a factory like a normal build unit. Next opportunity for German war trade is in January of 1940. If the Germans possess Paris, the Swedish-Finnish may buy 1 fighter by paying 5 IPP, and the unit must fly from a German homeland territory to the Swedish-Finnish during their payment phase. So basically what that entails is that the Germans have captured Paris. The Swedish are saying, hey, let us buy this fighter for cheap, and we'll use it against the Soviets like our tank. The Germans say, you know what, I did that before, and I'll let you do it again. So the Germans basically have to place the fighter in their territory, fly it across their territory like Lend-Lease, and it lands in a zone. So let's say it lands up here, and basically what that entails too is that if some other power controls a portion of Germany, the Germans couldn't fly over that territory if it had like an anti-aircraft gun. So it just works as a Lend-Lease fighter, but the Swede-Finns have to pay 5 IPP, which is a nice price. It's cheaper than a standard unit. All right, next up we have Italian surplus. January of 1940, Italy can sell a biplane to Sweden-Finland for 5 IPP. So the Swedish-Finnish pay 5 IPP, and the biplane has to exist on the map beforehand. And basically what that entails is that if you're playing with biplanes, so early war fighters, the Italians can take one of their existing units and basically Lend-Lease it across the European continent, over Germany to the Swedish-Finnish Federation. And that would basically get, Italy some money on the fly if they really wanted to send over an extra unit. And if you're not playing with pre-war fighters, you could always elect to send an Italian fighter, again, an existing one. Maybe, Italy needs some money on the fly and they really want to just get rid of that fighter. They can fly it up here. That one's a little unlikely, but it could happen. Next, we have another January of 1940. Italy may sell one of its existing torpedo boat destroyers to Sweden-Finland for 2 IPP. The IPP goes to Italy. The torpedo boat becomes Swedish-Finnish and may move from its present location to the Baltic Sea. And it can move 5 sea zones. So how that works is that the Italians, of course, as you may know, have a torpedo boat destroyer at the beginning of the turn, or at the beginning of the game. Let's say they still have it in 1940, and again, they want to make some extra money. For 2 IPCs, the Swedish-Finnish player pays those 2 IPPs to Italy, and then the Italian TPD becomes a Federation TPT, and then it can sail 5 spaces, and so looking at the board, 3, 4, 5, that'll get it to around the English Channel. From there, it can sail further into the Baltic Sea, and let's add it to the Finnish Navy. And lastly, for Italy, is another January of 1940. The Swedish-Finnish player may start building a heavy cruiser at the price of a light cruiser, and the Italians must agree to this, and the Italian player gains 2 IPPs when the Swedish-Finnish start building that heavy cruiser. So let's say that the Swedish-Finnish want a heavy cruiser. What they do is they ask the Italians, hey, you're going to make some money out of this, and, you've already sent us some units, and why not, keep up the goodwill. So the Swedish Federation will place let's get that to focus, a heavy cruiser on the build chart, and what's going to happen is the Italian player is going to get 2 IPPs immediately, and the Swedish-Finnish get to build this heavy cruiser at the price of a light cruiser. So basically a cheap heavy cruiser. And now the Federation has 3 naval ports. So let's put this down here. Why not? Spread out the Navy a little bit. And then the last Lend-Lease opportunity, if you're still here, is by British licensing. So in 1939, January, the Federation may build a medium bomber by paying 8 IPP, and the UK gains 2 IPP from this, and it flies from London to the Federation via a Lend-Lease supply path. So let's say they build that. The Swedish-Finnish, like I said, pay 8, and the British get 2, and it flies into a Swede-Finn territory. All right, and then as you can see, we have them all set up. I've kind of gone through a lot of things, and lastly, we just have a few of the units now. As you guys know from the Finland at War, the Winter War expansion, all the Finnish units work the same as in Historical Board Gaming's expansion set, with the ski infantry and the elite militia. And then lastly, when it comes to some special units, we have the aircraft cruiser. And how this thing works is basically, I gotta find it on the chart. Let's see. Looking for it. Oh, here it is. So basically, this thing is, in all purposes, a light cruiser, except for the fact that it gets first strike, and it gives a +1 to a maritime patrol craft aircraft. So basically, let's say that it sails over here, and the fighter goes on maritime air patrol. It gives a +1 attack or defense to that fighter against submarines. So it's a good sub-hunting vessel. All right. And lastly, for special units, we have the Emergency Fighter. The Emergency Fighter is optional. It's available in January of 1941. It only costs 8 IPP, and it attacks and defends at 5. So it's a cheaper but lesser fighter unit. All right. And that is everything for this. You can check out the rules down at the Axis and Allies Facebook page. You can download them. They're really nice and everything. Of course, you're going to need your own pieces for this expansion set, which are always available either in Axis and Allies games or at Historical Board Gaming. For roundels for the Federation, I went with these. They're Ukrainian, I think, World War I roundels. But they're pretty nice because of the fact that they go with the colors of both the Swedish and Finnish flags. And as you can see, they look pretty nice up here once you've got a fully aligned Nordic Federation. So, I hope you all enjoyed that video, and I hope to see you guys again. This was a pretty interesting custom expansion, and I'll see if I can play it. It definitely is pretty different, but I do like the additional units and cool tactics that it can add to the game. So I hope to see you guys again, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Cobra, out.